Initiation by Elisabeth Haich, Chapter 25, Years of Preparation. Accompanied by Menu, I go to the temple. How often will I be going through this long colonnade between palace and temple? How often, and for how many years? Until I myself become the path, so that with my eyes closed, my feet would carry me to the temple. Today I enter the temple for the first time as a neophyte. Just because I would like to hurry, I hold myself in check, and I walk with ceremonial slowness. I am determined to enjoy to the very last drop the pleasure of beginning my initiation. I am withdrawn within myself, deep in thought, fully conscious of all the things my father told me. I go forward to my future duties as an initiate. At the entrance, the same neophyte as before is awaiting me. Menu takes her leave. At first she embraces me, kisses me, and holds me tight, as if we were never going to see one another again. Then she calms herself and she bows before me in the way she believes she should. I embrace her, and I feel that my mother is also kissing me through Menu's lips. The neophyte accompanies me to Ptahhotep, who is waiting in his little reception room. How often will I be standing thus before him? How often will his eyes rest upon me, or pierce me through and walk and through with, or pierce me through and through with their peace, assurance, and strength? My dear child, he begins. Initiation, as I've already explained to you, means to become conscious on the highest level, the divine plane. To be able to do this requires long physical training and spiritual preparation. One first must strengthen the nerves to enable them to bear these high vibrations without harm and without death. To become conscious on a given plane means to conduct the vibrations characteristic of this plane into the nerves and through the nerves into the body. From the time a body is born, that is, from the time a self dwells in it, the body develops a power of resistance corresponding to the average degree of consciousness of the spirit dwelling in it. The degree of consciousness of a living creature fluctuates up and down depending on its emotional condition within the limits of an octave of vibrations. These fluctuations, however, must not exceed the limits of elasticity of the nerves, for if they do, injuries and sicknesses of a more or less serious nature occur, even death. The vibration belonging to creative vital energy is absolutely lethal for creatures whose consciousness has not yet reached this level. It would burn out the nerves and the nervous centers. For this reason, vital energy from the spinal column, where it has a seat, is transformed into a low vibration corresponding to the degree of consciousness of the person concerned, and only this transformed vital current is conducted into the body. Thus, animals, for example, are animated to much lower life vibration than primitive man, and primitive man, with his beast-like, selfish nature, is animated by lower vibrations of vital energy than a person who is spiritually developed. If one were to conduct the vital energy of a highly developed human being into an animal or a much less developed human, the animal or the lower level human would die instantly because of the contact with the more powerful vibrations. The great initiation means consciously experiencing the vital energy and creative vibrations of eternal being, experiencing these vibrations on every plane of development and in their original frequency without transformation, and simultaneously conducting these vibrations into the nerves and the body. This naturally requires a corresponding amount of resistance, which can be obtained through physical and spiritual training. That means that one must slowly and cautiously Prepare and awaken the appropriate nerve centers and learn to control them. Initially, you will be able to receive this physical and spiritual training from Mentupa, the leader of the school of neophytes. In your concentration exercises, Ima, or Ima, I-M-A, Ima, and Ptahhotep points to the neophyte who brought me here. Oh, and Ptahhotep points to the neophyte who brought me here. So, in your concentration exercises, Ima will help you. When you have passed your preparatory tests given to you by Mentupa and Ima, you will receive further training and your initiation under my guidance. Now, Ima will take you to the neophyte school and give you everything you need for the beginning. If you want to speak to me during your training, you can arrange to see me any evening. May God guide your further steps. After Ptahhotep's benediction, I bow and I follow Ima to the school of neophytes. Ima takes me to a little cell, one of many built in the temple wall. He gives me a plain white linen robe and a pair of plain sandals, saying that this cell belongs to me. When I come out, having exchanged my silken robe and my golden sandals for the simple clothing, I am a neophyte exactly like Ima. He leads me on through the long colonnade, through a great door, and we step into the temple garden. The garden is magnificent. A large rectangular plot of green grass bordered by palms makes an excellent place for exercise. As we go on, I see the neophytes at work behind the park-like part of the garden, near the vegetable plots and the orchards. All the neophytes wear the same kind of clothing as mine, but none of them is as young as I. Ima takes me to Mentupa, the head of the school of neophytes. He is a friendly person with soft, loving eyes. He explains my daily duties to me. The neophytes are divided up into groups. All groups are under Mentupa's guidance, but each individual group also works under the leadership of an advanced neophyte, a candidate for priesthood. Ima leads the group to which I am assigned. He is tall, slender, a very powerful young man. I noticed his crystal pure radiance when he first took me to Ptahhotep. He has passed most of his preparatory tests, and the time is close at hand for him to be initiated. Ima is a candidate for the priesthood. In his appearance, he doesn't give the impression of a man so much as of an androgynous being standing above and beyond sex, as much above and beyond as an archangel. He radiates all the keenness of a sharp sword. His angelically beautiful face bears the signs of supreme intelligence and powers of concentration. Above his eyebrows there are two well-developed mounds, the signs of wisdom. His mouth is well-formed, beautiful, full of energy, but with soft corners delicately chiseled, revealing his tender love for every living creature. I love him from the very moment, feeling complete confidence in him as I would in a dearly beloved brother. I am happy that he is the one who is to prepare me for my tests. Ima introduces me to the other neophytes. They have all chosen the priesthood as their calling in life, but only those who pass their tests and receive initiation will become priests and priestesses. There are many who never make it. Nevertheless, if they wish to do so, they can spend the rest of their lives in the service of the temple, working in the garden and tending the animals. The neophytes who pass their preparatory examinations receive ever new and progressively more difficult tasks and assignments parallel with their degree of advancement. The group under Ima's guidance is one made up entirely of spiritually well-developed neophytes. On their father's side, most of them are descended from the sons of God, just as I am, and they can be recognized, even from a distance, by the elongated shape of their heads. I am assigned to this group, and I feel good in their pure atmosphere. Every morning at sunrise, we have to assemble in the garden. We begin with physical exercises. The exercises involve strong concentration. We assume various body postures, and while doing breathing exercises, must guide our consciousness into different parts of the body. Through long and patient practice, in this way we can make the entire body completely conscious, move at will, control and guide the smallest parts of the body and all internal organs. Patiently and persistently, we thus develop the body into an excellent instrument. When we have finished these exercises, we go into the great room of the temple for training of mind and soul. In these exercises, Mentupa dictates to us various interrelated dream pictures, which we must experience as intensively as if they were real. With these dream pictures, we intentionally produce different emotional states within ourselves, and we learn how to control them. With these exercises, Mentupa takes us through all the different spheres of the underworld and overworld, through the 7 hells and the 7 heavens, teaching us to keep our presence of mind no matter what may happen, so that even in the most difficult situations, we can instantly decide what to do. As soon as we have completely mastered this kind of exercise, we go a step further. We have to experience different emotional states on command, without dream pictures, but with the same intensity as if we really had a reason. We begin these exercises at the lowest negative condition, moving up step by step until we reach the highest positive condition. To take an example, we begin by experiencing the deepest state of dejection, moving up gradually through indifference, and then on higher and higher through joy, and on up to the highest state of happiness. When after long practice we get proficient at this exercise, we are obliged to practice faster changeovers from one emotional state to another until we can experience them all one after another as easily and positively as a musician draws forth a whole gamut of tone from his instrument, from the lowest to the highest. When we achieve proficiency at running quickly through the whole scale of human emotions, from the darkest desperation to the highest bliss, we take the next step. This consists of experiencing opposite emotional states, one after another, with no time lost for transition, shifting from deep sadness immediately to highest hilarity, or, to take another example, from fear immediately to self-assured courage. We are only permitted to do these exercises under the direction of our teacher. They represent a great strain on our nerves. It takes us a long time to reach the point of being able, with the aid of dream pictures, to experience the emotional states as if they were external events in our lives. It takes us still longer to be able to experience the full scale of emotional states, from the lowest to the highest, only when we can bring our nerves to complete rest after these exercises, keeping them in a well-rested condition throughout the day, are we permitted to practice the most difficult exercises, experiencing diametrically opposite emotions without a time of transition. The aim of these exercises is to make us independent of both external events and our personal moods, thus enabling us to determine our own moods ourselves and maintain our emotional equilibrium no matter what happens. We are taught constant inner watchfulness and presence of mind. People believe that there always has to be a reason for their being joyous or happy. Through the exercises with the dream pictures, we first imagine we have a reason for being in one mood or another. Thus we learn to control the reasons themselves. As we do not actually have a reason, however, we have to imagine one for ourselves. Then comes the next step of experiencing an emotional state by itself, without a reason, without having previously imagined a situation, such as would call forth the mood to be experienced. After long practice, when we have become quite skillful at these exercises, we discover we have always imagined we had a reason for being sad or joyous, depressed or exuberant, etc. Through these exercises, we thus become convinced that events and occurrences in our lives must not have any effect on us. We discover that every state of consciousness arises and can only arise within ourselves. One and the same event can provoke one person to laughter, another to tears, while a third remains completely indifferent, all because each is merely projecting outwardly his own inward attitude, and it is only this inward attitude which provokes our response, not the external events themselves. As a final result, the pupil must attain the ability to keep his emotional composure imperturbable and unshakable at all times, never losing it under any circumstances. These exercises also teach us that whatever happens on earth is only a transitory dream picture projected in time and space by ourselves. We only need to take it seriously insofar as it adds to our experience. But it takes a long, long time to reach this degree of ability. We have to keep ourselves under the strictest observation, must never forget ourselves for a moment, and must always be conscious and aware, always analyzing every feeling, every thought, to determine in what stratum of the self it has originated. And all this is not something one can learn to do from one day to the next. In addition to this long spiritual training, we also have to practice purely mental concentration exercises. These are assigned to me by Ima. After the group exercises, he takes me to a quiet corner of the garden and explains what concentration means. I must not allow my thoughts to roam around aimlessly. On the contrary, I must command myself to concentrate only on one prescribed concept. I must pull my thoughts together into a single point, giving them a centripetal rather than centrifugal direction. Ima gives me a sentence on which to concentrate. When I have succeeded in concentrating on it, I am to go and tell him. Then he leaves me alone. The sentence is, I always manifest divinity. I sit down and start to concentrate on this sentence. I repeat mentally, I always manifest divinity. Once, twice, 10 times, 100 times. I think of nothing else. I always manifest divinity. I always manifest divinity. I always manifest divinity. After an hour, I go to Ima and I tell him, I can't concentrate on that sentence. It's impossible. Impossible? He asks. Why should it be impossible? You told me that concentration means directing all forces, all thoughts to a single point, drawing and holding together all the forces of the intellect and of the consciousness. But when I concentrate on a sentence, I cannot draw together all these forces of my intellect into a single point. The sentence consists of several words. These words follow each other both in time and space. That means I can't simultaneously think these words in a given point, but only one after another in time and space. And when I have thought the sentence through to the end, I have to jump back again to the beginning and think it through to the end again, and that's why concentration in this way is impossible. Either I have to jump back to the end, from the end to the beginning after each sentence, or if I imagine a sentence in a circular form, my concentration results in running around in a circle. But that's not concentration. Ima listens attentively. Then, quite pleased, he says, You have practiced right. You've discovered it's impossible to concentrate on words. The fact that you finally imagined the words to be in the form of a circle shows that you were making real effort at concentration. But no matter how close you pull the words together, they still form a circle, and you can never get them into the center. You have found that no matter how much force you exert on them in the direction of the center, the words resist the force, so you cannot draw them into the center. This principle of resistance towards being drawn into the center is one we use in building bridges. We build an arch of stones, just as you have built a circle out of words. And the bridge doesn't fall into the water because the stones exert pressure on each other, and the stones do not yield to the pressure. Because of the power of their resistance, the stones hold the whole bridge together. But if your concentration aims to get to the center, it is prevented from doing so by the resistance of the words, and the concentration is impossible. The same happens when you try to concentrate on one word. A word consists of letters, which can never be drawn together completely in a single point. So what must I do? For your next exercise, try to concentrate on a single letter. Take the letter O, for example, says Ima, and he leaves me alone. I try it. Sitting in the grass again, I concentrate on the O. Mentally, I repeat the letter O, saying O, 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 and still thinking of nothing but O, 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 until all of a sudden I make a new discovery. I go back to Ima, and I tell him laughingly, I've already finished. Well, he asks, what have you found out? That the O I was concentrating on all of a sudden turned into a pipe, a long O-shaped tunnel in which I was constantly moving forward. But that isn't perfect concentration either. Good, says Ima. That means you've already reached the fourth dimension. Now, try again with a sentence. I always manifest divinity. And try again to concentrate on that. How would you solve the problem now? What should I do, I ask? What would you do? Asks Ima in his turn. I consider the problem for a while, and then say, the words are the clothing, the material manifestation of the meaning. If I want to get into the center, I must give up the words that hinder me and concentrate only on the meaning of the sentence without the words, without the form. Is that right? Ima smiles and says, let's see how you succeed. Go and try, then come back. I go back and concentrate on the meaning of the sentence. I always manifest divinity. Only on the meaning. Then I go back to Ima. He's just finishing a discussion with another neophyte. Seeing that I am waiting for him, he gives me a roguish glance as if he already knew how I had got on with my concentration exercise. Well, he asks. Ima, it's so strange. I tried to concentrate only on the meaning of the sentence. I couldn't think of it anymore, and the whole inner process moved out of my head into my breast, so that I wasn't thinking it anymore, but I was feeling it and experiencing it. The moment I concentrated on the meaning of the sentence without words, I myself became the meaning. But then the sentence has to be read differently, not I always manifest divinity, but much more accurately, I am divinity, which is always manifesting itself. As I speak, Ima looks at me, with a growing smile and a growing pleasure. You have concentrated very well, he says, very well. You've discovered that concentration cannot be a permanent condition, but only a transition between the projected world and being. When you concentrate your thoughts on something, you can't stop with just thinking, because concentration leads you back to yourself, and you become the very thing you're concentrating on. From thinking, you progress through concentration into a state of being. Thinking ceases completely, and the thinker becomes identical with what he is thinking. To think something means to project a thought outwardly by means of the intellect, as if by means of a mirror, hence to step out of oneself. Through concentration, we draw the projection back again, and what is thought becomes identical again with the thinker, with the person himself. The two factors are joined in perfect unity. That which is created goes back into the Creator. Go on practicing, and you will experience this process with even greater clarity. Here's a new exercise. You like to sit under this palm tree. Concentrate on it. And with that, Ima leaves. I sit down again. I look at the palm tree, keeping my thoughts centered on this tree, nothing else. Hours go by, and evening comes. I have to go home. Manu is waiting for me outside, and we go home together. The next morning, I am again in the temple garden, and after our group exercises, I take my place again under the palm tree, concentrating on it. When I began this exercise, all kinds of extraneous thoughts disturbed me. I suddenly remembered what Manu had told me the evening before. I noticed a bird up in the fronds. Then a gnat was humming about my ears. Then I remembered Chancellor Ruka's impertinences and felt angry. But I chased away all foreign thoughts as they arose in me and concentrated only on the palm tree. Now I am getting along better. The thoughts can no longer reach me and really disturb me. Previously, I was still in the world of thoughts. Among the thoughts, my thoughts were able to push me to and fro, but I did not let myself be pushed around. I stayed just where I was with the palm tree, gliding slowly, almost imperceptibly, further and further into myself, where thoughts could no longer follow and disturb me. Now and again, a thought bobs up, creeping through my intellect like a tired traveler. From my secure position, I observe this stray, straggling, tired thought, but I don't bother about it. I think of the palm tree. Slowly, the palm tree fills my entire being. Days go by. Perhaps weeks, too, I don't know. I don't know anything more that's going on in my outer life as I am concentrating on the palm tree with all my attention. Then, all of a sudden, I have the odd feeling that I am no longer looking at the tree from the outside, but from the inside. To be sure, I still perceive its outward form with my eyes, but I begin to an ever-increasing extent to see and experience the inner being, the animating creative principle of the palm, to see it, to experience it, to be it. And finally, there comes a moment in which I am suddenly conscious of the fact that the palm is no longer outside myself. No, it never was outside. It was only a false conception on my part. The palm tree is in me, and I in it. I myself am the palm tree. I do not know how long I have been thus absorbed with myself. I don't even know what time means. There, in the condition I am in, the concept of time is unknown. there in the condition I am in the concept of time is unknown. Neither can I explain what is there. No, neither can I explain what this there in quotes, is. But all at once some power draws me back slowly into my personal consciousness, and I notice that Ima is standing before me. My eyes meet his gentle glance. He sits down near me in the soft grass, waits patiently till I come back to my senses, and then looks at me questioningly. I make 1 or 2 attempts to speak, but I don't succeed right away. Speech seems to have become completely superfluous. Finally, my activity reawakens and my will functions again. The nerves of my larynx set my vocal cords in motion, and I can produce sounds again. "Oh, Ima," I say earnestly, softly, and surprised at the sound of my own voice. I have become the palm tree. Or better, I've discovered that the palm tree was always I, only I didn't realize it. Ima nods his angelically beautiful head and beams with joy. "You are making wonderful progress. I'm so glad, so glad. You're making faster progress than anyone has ever made in so short a period of time. If you pass all your other preparatory tests just as fast, you will soon be ready for initiation." Joyously, we look at each other in silence. As I look into his eyes, I feel even more deeply how pure a being Ima is and what tremendous strength he radiates. The air is purer wherever he is. Then he offers me his hand and we get up. It's time for me to go home. After I've retired for the night, I'm ready. I'm already lying on my bed. Minyu kneels beside me on the floor and asks, "What are you doing now in the temple?" "We do exercises." "Tell me what kind of exercises?" In all seriousness, I answer, "Well, my last exercise was to think so long about a palm tree that I finally discovered I myself am the palm tree." Minyu looks at me in amazement. "What have you discovered? What are you?" she asks. "The palm tree? You were the palm tree?" She asks, wide-eyed. Yes, Mimu, but leave me in peace. I want to go to sleep." Then Minyu begins to laugh so hard that she rolls around on the floor and tears stream down her cheeks. "So you're a palm tree. Where is your trunk? Where are your leaves?" "So you're not a young girl anymore." At that, I sit up in bed, offended in my pride, and I answer with all the dignity at my command, "Please, take a note. I am not a young girl, but the representative of the queen. I am the wife of the pharaoh, do you understand? And if you're going to make fun of my exercises, I won't tell you anything more." At that, Minyu begins to cry, covering my hands with kisses. She says through her tears, "Didn't I tell you it would be dangerous to be initiated? Who knows but what they may really cast a spell on you and turn you into a palm tree? You talk so strangely now. Watch out, please watch out. It would be good if the pharaoh knew what was happening." Drying her tears, Minyu leaves my room with a worried look on her face. I remain alone with a very unpleasant feeling that I should not have talked to Minyu about my deepest, most sacred experiences. The next day, Ptahhotep sends for me. I am to see him in the evening. He sits on his accustomed place in his little reception room. His glance is as deep as the sky is high. He knows everything. "Come here, my little daughter," he says with a smile. I step up to him confidently. He takes my hands in his, smiles, and he asks, "Do you know what your next task will be?" "Yes, Father, I know," I reply. "And what is it?" "To keep silent." I reply, smiling back confidently despite my guilty feeling because I know he does not condemn me. He nods. We understand each other. I don't need to apologize. He knows me better than I know myself, and he knows with absolute certainty that I wasn't acting malevolently when I spoke with Manu about sacred things far beyond her level of comprehension. I look into Ptahhotep's eyes. He sees me with all my imperfections, but he also sees my determination to learn to keep silent in the future. Then he gently strokes my hair. I bow and leave. Oh, how often am I to stand before him and have to confess that my tongue ran away from my brain, that I have failed again to be able to offer enough resistance to the basic urge for communication that has been planted in every human breast. But nevertheless, in time, I do learn to be on guard against this power too. I learn to keep the urge for communication as carefully and thoroughly under control as my favorite lion, and through this constant self-observation, I gradually form the habit of listening inwardly whenever I want to say something, to be sure I have authority to say it. Gradually, I learn to keep my mouth shut, except when I really have something to say, and I come to recognize two beings in myself: a personal ego, which is often inclined to chatter without control, purely for the sake of communicating and attracting attention to my person. And in the background of my consciousness, a higher self, which restrains my personal ego, telling it when and what it is to speak or do, and when it is to remain silent or passive. The important thing is to pay attention and to obey the orders of this higher self. Merely to hear its commands is not enough. Everybody does that. During this period of time, Ima gives me further exercises in concentration to do after the group exercises in the temple are over. We sit together in my favorite corner in the temple garden, and Ima explains. You know now from experience what concentration is, but if you observe yourself during concentration, you will notice that in doing it you go through three phases: intellectual, emotional, and spiritual. All concentration begins with the intellectual phase. You direct your thoughts to the object of your concentration and consider what this object actually is. In this stage, you are using your intellect because you want to clarify your thoughts and seek a completely satisfactory definition expressing fully and clearly the object of your concentration. As soon as you have found such a definition, your intellectual work is done, for you know now what this thing is, and you don't need to reflect on it anymore. For when you know what something is, you don't cogitate about it anymore. Thinking is the bridge between ignorance and knowledge. When we know everything, like God, we have no further need for thinking. God is omniscient. He himself is knowledge, and his knowledge is as a perfect circle. What should he think about when he knows everything? Only the person who is obliged to expand his knowledge needs to think. This work of expanding knowledge consists of thinking. When your knowledge concerning the object of your attention is complete, you make the transition from thinking to feeling. This is the second phase of concentration. Your consciousness projects outwardly through your nervous system all the characteristics of the object of your concentration, impressing them on your organs of sense so that you have the sensation of experiencing them. With every nerve and every drop of your blood, you feel the object of your concentration and what it is like. When you have thoroughly experienced the object of your concentration in terms of thinking and feeling, you go on to the third phase, spiritual concentration. This means that in your consciousness, you become identical with the object of concentration. You are no longer thinking about it or feeling what or how it is. You are it. We call this a state of being. In this state, you don't need to think about this thing anymore or feel it because you have become it yourself. In this condition, all your thoughts, all your feelings, all your words, all your deeds become manifestations of the object of your concentration. You experience this with the palm tree, but you hadn't yet had any exercise in observing yourself during those 3 phases. To take another example, let's say you're sitting on the bank of a river and you're concentrating on the water. First, you reflect on what water is. You recall that water is liquid, made through the union of 2 gases. You know that it can be warm or cold, and that if it gets cold enough, it turns into a solid, that it has color and numerous other properties. And you think along these lines until your intellect has completely grasped what water is and means. That is all intellectual consideration. No, intellectual concentration. Then you get up and you walk out into the water. And now you feel what water is and what it is like. You feel through direct sensation that water is liquid, that it flows about your body, and you feel its temperature without measuring it. You can splash about in the water, make little ripples or even big waves with your hands and arms. This is concentration in terms of feeling. In complete concentration, however, there comes the moment when you cease to being separated from water. You merge and coalesce with water. You no longer have a human body. You become the water. Now you no longer think about water and its various properties. Neither do you need to feel what water is and what it is like. On the contrary, you are now water yourself. Complete concentration means becoming identical with the object of concentration, being it. In the 2 previous phases of concentration, you are separated, whereas in this 3rd, last phase, the condition of being you experience complete unity. Then, as a consequence, complete understanding and complete recognition from within. Of course, your body hasn't turned into water, but in your consciousness, you experience this state. Watch the people around you. You'll notice some are constantly talking about love and goodness, wearing sweet smiles of smugness, trying to show others on all possible occasions that they are loving and good. But only on the outside. They wear the mask of love and goodness, but when it comes to deeds, they reveal their selfishness, because they are selfish. Another person may never talk about goodness, never think that he wants to be good, yet everything he thinks, he says, and does comes forth out of goodness, because he himself is goodness. A person doesn't think about what he is, nor does he feel it, simply because he is what he is. He doesn't need to speak about it. Everything he thinks, says, and does is the expression of what he is, the manifestation of his own being. Now comes the most difficult task of all. Concentrate on yourself. First, reflect and consider what you are, and then feel what you are, and finally, you must be what you are. For you to have become conscious here on earth, you have to leave your true self and enter into your intellect and feelings. So far, you've only been able to think and feel what you are, but you have never yet been able to be what you are. Observe the people around you, and you will see that they are not their real selves. On the contrary, they're always identifying themselves with thoughts, feelings, and roles that they're playing here on earth. they have fallen out of their real selves and become pretenders. People living in a world of make-believe. Only in the eyes of very small children can you still see the sparkle, the light of real being. As its intellect awakens, the child begins to identify himself with its outward person, getting more and more removed from its divine true self, and all the while the person we think about him is only a mask through which the self, the true self, the great invisible one, looks out at the world. The person cannot be more than an instrument for the manifestation of the self, but people get so attached to their mask that they cannot free themselves from it anymore. The true self is king and master. The person is only his his servant. But the sons of men are abandoned of themselves, and descending from the throne, identified themselves with their mask and with their person. They make a king out of the servant and separate themselves from their true being. They force their higher self into exile, into the unconscious. The intellect causes the separation, and by means of concentration exercises and a purposeful effort to become conscious and aware, the intellect can be an instrument by which we get out of this separation and back to our true self. In the past, you have concentrated on various things. From now on, your one and only task is to concentrate on yourself, progressing through the 3 phases of concentration until you achieve complete identification with your own true self, until you are really yourself. It is your task to reach this state of being, which can only be described in the first person as I am that I am. But watch out. It's not enough for you to think what you are, nor to feel what you are. You must be what you are in your own true inner self. That is your concentration task until your initiation. And so I enter the long period of my life in which I devote myself to these 2 tasks, learning to be my own true self and learning to keep silent.